Resistance is the unseen force that rises whenever a person tries to move towards something meaningful, creative, or life-changing. It does not appear as an obvious enemy, but rather as hesitation, delay, doubt, and distraction. It convinces a person to postpone important work and replace it with trivial tasks that feel comfortable in the moment, but lead nowhere in the long run. It whispers logical excuses that seem reasonable, making avoidance appear justified. A person may believe they are being practical or cautious, while in reality, they are being held back by this internal force. It is present in every human life and does not discriminate between beginners and experts. Even those who have achieved great success face it daily. The difference lies in how individuals respond to it. Some surrender to it repeatedly, allowing it to dictate their actions, while others recognize its patterns and act in spite of it. The closer a person moves towards something important, the stronger this force becomes. This is why fear, doubt, and hesitation often intensify right before a breakthrough or a major step forward. One of the most common ways it appears is through procrastination. A person knows exactly what needs to be done, yet finds countless reasons to delay it. They may suddenly feel the urge to clean, organize, or engage in other minor activities that give a sense of productivity, but ultimately serve as distractions. Time slips away while the important task remains untouched. This cycle repeats itself, creating frustration and guilt. Fear is another powerful form. Fear of failure can paralyze action, making a person imagine worst-case scenarios and potential embarrassment. At the same time, fear of success can be equally strong. Success brings change. Self-doubt quietly reinforces this force. It creates an inner voice that questions ability and worth. A person may compare themselves to others and conclude that they are not talented enough or experienced enough to succeed. This comparison often ignores the effort and persistence behind others' achievements and focuses only on perceived gaps. As a result, confidence weakens and action is delayed. Rationalization plays a clever role in maintaining avoidance. It provides seemingly valid reasons to postpone work. A person may believe they need more time, better tools, or additional knowledge before they can begin. While preparation has its place, it often becomes an endless process that prevents actual progress. The perfect moment never arrives, and the work remains undone. Sometimes this force takes the form of self-sabotage. A person may start a project with enthusiasm, but abandon it midway. They might set unrealistic expectations and then use failure as proof that they are incapable. This pattern creates a cycle where effort is followed by withdrawal, reinforcing the belief that success is out of reach. Perfectionism is another disguise. It convinces a person that their work must be flawless before it can be completed or shared. This leads to constant revisions, hesitation, or complete stagnation. Instead of producing something imperfect but real, a person remains stuck in an endless pursuit of an ideal that cannot be reached. In this way, perfectionism becomes a barrier rather than a standard. Comfort zones provide fertile ground for this force to thrive. Human beings naturally seek ease and avoid discomfort. Growth, however, requires stepping into uncertainty and facing challenges. This internal resistance pushes a person to remain within familiar boundaries, even when those boundaries limit potential. It encourages short-term comfort over long-term fulfillment. Distractions become a convenient escape. Activities that offer instant gratification, such as entertainment or mindless browsing, become more appealing than meaningful work. These distractions provide temporary relief from the discomfort of effort, but do not contribute to personal growth. Over time, they create a sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction. This force cannot be completely eliminated. It is a constant presence that must be acknowledged and managed. Awareness is the first step toward overcoming it. When a person recognizes its patterns, they can begin to separate it from their true intentions. they realize that hesitation and fear are not signs of inability, but natural responses to meaningful challenges. Interestingly, the tasks that trigger the strongest resistance are often the ones that matter the most. The intensity of avoidance can serve as an indicator of importance. Instead of running away from discomfort, a person can use it as a guide, understanding that it points toward growth and transformation. This force does not limit itself to creative work. It appears in all areas of life, including relationships, health, and career decisions. A person may avoid having an honest conversation, starting a new routine, or making a necessary change. In each case, the same patterns of delay and justification emerge. Isolation strengthens its hold. When goals remain private and there is no accountability, it becomes easier to give in to avoidance. A person may convince themselves that postponing action has no consequences. On the other hand, sharing goals and creating accountability can weaken this force by introducing a sense of responsibility. External circumstances are often used as excuses. Lack of time, resources, or support may be real challenges, but they can also become convenient justifications for inaction. This internal resistance amplifies these obstacles, making them appear insurmountable. However, when something truly matters, people often find ways to move forward despite limitations. Unproductive habits can develop as a result of avoidance. Instead of engaging in meaningful work, a person may turn to activities that provide temporary comfort. These habits can become addictive, further distancing them from their goals. The more they indulge in these distractions, the harder it becomes to break free.
A subtle form of avoidance is engaging in activities that resemble the desired goal, but do not require the same level of commitment. A person who dreams of writing may spend excessive time reading about writing or discussing ideas without actually producing any work. These activities create an illusion of progress while maintaining a safe distance from real effort. Starting is often the most difficult step. The mind resists the initial effort, creating a sense of heaviness and reluctance. Once action begins, however, momentum builds and the resistance weakens. This is why even small steps can be powerful. Taking action, no matter how minor, disrupts the cycle of avoidance. Fear of judgment adds another layer of difficulty. People worry about how others will perceive their efforts and potential failures. This fear can prevent them from sharing their work or even starting it. In reality, most people are too focused on their own lives to judge others as harshly as imagined. This internal force is self-generated. It does not come from outside, but from within the mind. This means it can be challenged and overcome. While it may feel powerful,
Discipline becomes an essential tool in this process. Relying on motivation alone is unreliable because it fluctuates. Discipline, on the other hand, creates consistency. Establishing a routine allows a person to act regardless of how they feel. By showing up consistently, they reduce the influence of resistance. Action is more valuable than endless thinking. Planning and preparation have their place, but overthinking can become another form of avoidance. Taking imperfect action moves a person forward, while waiting for perfect conditions keeps them stuck. Uncertainty often fuels hesitation. When the path ahead is unclear, it becomes easier to delay action. Having a sense of direction, even if it is not fully defined, can provide the confidence needed to move forward. Clarity does not require knowing every detail, but understanding the general destination. Avoidance creates emotional strain. When a person ignores their true calling, they often experience guilt, frustration, and a sense of unfulfillment. This inner conflict can affect their overall well-being. Facing challenges and taking action, even when difficult, leads to a deeper sense of satisfaction. Taking responsibility is crucial. Blaming external factors may provide temporary comfort, but does not lead to change. Accepting responsibility empowers a person to take control of their actions and decisions. It shifts the focus from excuses to solutions. This internal resistance does not disappear after initial success. It evolves and reappears at new levels of growth. Each new challenge brings a new form of hesitation. This means that overcoming it is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process.
It can also disguise itself as something positive. A person may prioritize helping others or engaging in secondary tasks instead of focusing on their own goals. While these actions may seem noble, they can become a way to avoid personal responsibility. The ego plays a significant role in maintaining this resistance. It seeks comfort, validation, and control. When faced with situations that challenge its identity, it reacts with fear and avoidance. Moving beyond this requires a willingness to step into discomfort and embrace uncertainty. Focusing on the process rather than the outcome can reduce pressure. When attention shifts from results to effort, the fear of failure decreases. This allows a person to work more freely and consistently. Persistence is key. Progress is not achieved through a single act of courage, but through repeated effort over time. Small, consistent actions accumulate and lead to meaningful results. This internal struggle is a defining part of the human experience. It shapes decisions, actions, and ultimately outcomes. By recognizing it and choosing to act despite it, a person moves closer to their potential and creates a path toward a more fulfilling life.
A clear shift begins when a person stops negotiating with hesitation and starts treating their work as a serious commitment rather than a casual interest. The moment this internal decision is made, a new mindset starts to form. Instead of asking whether they feel like working, they begin to show up regardless of mood, energy, or circumstances. This transition separates those who merely dream from those who actually produce. It is not based on inspiration, but on discipline and consistency. The difference between an amateur and a professional becomes evident in this stage. An amateur waits for the right mood, the perfect idea, or a surge of motivation. They work when they feel inspired and stop when things become difficult. A professional, on the other hand, understands that difficulty is part of the process. They do not rely on emotions to guide their actions. They commit to a schedule and follow it with determination. Whether the day feels productive or not, they show up and do the work. This professional mindset requires a shift in identity. A person no longer sees themselves as someone who is trying to do something, but as someone who does it, regardless of circumstances. This identity creates accountability. When a person identifies with their work, avoiding it becomes more uncomfortable than doing it. It becomes a part of who they are, rather than something optional.
Routine plays a crucial role in strengthening this mindset. By working at the same time each day, a person reduces the mental effort required to start. The decision is already made, and the habit takes over. This consistency builds momentum over time. Even on days when progress feels slow, the act of showing up reinforces discipline and weakens hesitation. Discipline is often misunderstood as something harsh or restrictive, but in reality, it creates freedom. When a person commits to a routine, they free themselves from the constant battle of deciding whether to work or not. This reduces mental fatigue and allows them to focus on the task itself. Over time, discipline becomes a source of stability and confidence. Another important aspect of this transition is learning to accept imperfection. Waiting for perfect conditions or perfect results only leads to delay. Progress comes from producing work that may not meet expectations at first. Each attempt provides valuable experience and moves a person closer to improvement. Perfection is not the starting point, but the result of continuous effort. Fear does not disappear in this process. It remains present, but its role changes. Instead of controlling action, it becomes something that is acknowledged and ignored. A person learns to act despite fear, rather than waiting for it to fade. This builds resilience and strengthens confidence over time.
Commitment also involves setting boundaries. Distractions must be limited to protect time and focus. This may require reducing time spent on unproductive activities or creating a dedicated space for work. These boundaries signal to the mind that the work is important and deserves attention. Another challenge that arises is dealing with criticism and rejection. When a person begins to produce and share their work, they expose themselves to judgment. This can trigger hesitation and self-doubt. However, understanding that criticism is part of growth helps in managing these reactions. Not all feedback is valuable, but learning to differentiate between constructive criticism and negativity is essential. Patience becomes a necessary quality. Results do not appear immediately, and progress can feel slow. This can be discouraging, especially when expectations are high. However, consistent effort over time leads to improvement. Trusting the process allows a person to continue working, even when immediate results are not visible. Another important shift is focusing on effort rather than outcomes. When attention is placed solely on results, it creates pressure and anxiety. By focusing on the act of working, a person gains a sense of control and satisfaction. The outcome becomes a byproduct of consistent effort rather than the sole objective. This stage also requires letting go of the need for approval. Seeking validation from others can create dependence and insecurity. A person may hesitate to take risks or try new ideas if they fear disapproval. By focusing on their own standards and goals, they become more independent and confident in their work.
Resistance often attempts to return in new forms. It may appear as boredom, frustration, or a desire to quit. Recognizing these patterns is important. Instead of reacting emotionally, a person can view these feelings as temporary and continue working. Over time, the intensity of these feelings decreases. Energy management becomes another key factor. Working consistently requires maintaining physical and mental well-being. Proper rest, nutrition, and breaks contribute to sustained productivity. Ignoring these aspects can lead to burnout, which weakens discipline and makes it easier to fall back into avoidance. Another concept that becomes important is separating identity from performance. A person's work may not always meet their expectations, but this does not define their worth. By maintaining this separation, they can continue improving without being discouraged by temporary setbacks. The role of habits becomes increasingly clear. Small, repeated actions shape long-term outcomes. By focusing on daily habits, a person builds a foundation for success. These habits create consistency and reduce reliance on willpower. There is also a shift in how time is perceived. Instead of waiting for large blocks of free time, a person learns to use whatever time is available. Even short periods of focused work can contribute to progress. This approach eliminates the excuse of not having enough time.
Another important realization is that inspiration often follows action rather than preceding it. Many people wait to feel inspired before starting, but in reality, inspiration tends to appear once work has begun. Taking the first step creates momentum, which leads to ideas and creativity. Accountability can further strengthen commitment. Sharing goals with others or working in an environment where progress is visible can create a sense of responsibility. This reduces the likelihood of giving in to avoidance. A person also learns to embrace repetition. Mastery requires practicing the same skills repeatedly. This can feel monotonous at times, but it is necessary for improvement. Accepting repetition as part of the process allows a person to continue progressing without losing motivation. Another challenge is dealing with setbacks. Failure is an inevitable part of growth. Instead of viewing it as a sign of inability, it can be seen as feedback.
Each failure provides information that can be used to improve future efforts. Confidence begins to build through action. It is not something that appears suddenly, but develops gradually. Each completed task, no matter how small, reinforces the belief that progress is possible. This creates a positive cycle where action leads to confidence, which leads to more action.
There is also a deeper sense of satisfaction that comes from consistent effort. Unlike temporary pleasures, this satisfaction is lasting. It comes from knowing that one is moving toward their goals and making meaningful use of their time. The environment also plays a role in shaping behavior. Surrounding oneself with supportive people and minimizing negative influences can strengthen commitment. A positive environment encourages growth and reduces distractions. Another important aspect is learning to prioritize. Not all tasks are equally important. Focusing on high-impact activities ensures that effort is directed toward meaningful progress. This prevents wasting time on tasks that do not contribute to long-term goals. Flexibility is also necessary. While discipline is important, being too rigid can lead to frustration. Adjusting plans when necessary allows a person to continue moving forward without feeling stuck. Over time, the struggle with resistance becomes more manageable. It does not disappear, but its influence weakens. A person becomes more aware of its patterns and less affected by its presence. This creates a sense of control and confidence. The journey requires continuous effort and self-awareness. There are no shortcuts or quick solutions. Progress comes from consistent action, discipline, and a willingness to face discomfort. This stage represents a transformation in how a person approaches their work and their life. It is no longer about waiting for the right moment, but about creating it through action. By committing to the process and refusing to give in to hesitation, a person moves closer to their potential. As consistency deepens and discipline becomes a natural part of daily life, a more profound transformation begins to take shape within a person. The work is no longer just about effort or routine, but about connection to something deeper and more meaningful. There comes a realization that true creative work does not originate purely from conscious thought or deliberate control. Instead, it often emerges from a quieter, less visible place within the mind, a place that cannot be forced, but can be accessed through commitment and presence. This deeper source of creativity requires trust. A person must trust that ideas will come, that solutions will appear, and that progress will unfold even when everything is not fully understood. Doubt may still arise, but it no longer dominates the process. Instead of waiting for certainty, action continues despite uncertainty. This trust is not blind, but built through repeated experience. Each time a person shows up and works, they strengthen their connection to this inner source. A shift also occurs in how control is perceived. In the early stages, there is often a strong desire to control every aspect of the work, to plan every detail and ensure everything goes perfectly. Over time, it becomes clear that excessive control can limit creativity. When a person loosens this grip, they allow new ideas and perspectives to emerge. This does not mean abandoning structure, but balancing it with openness. The act of working becomes almost meditative. Focus deepens, distractions fade, and time seems to pass differently. In these moments, there is a sense of flow, where effort feels natural and unforced. This state cannot be commanded directly, but it can be invited through regular practice and concentration. The more a person commits to their work, the more frequently they experience this state. Another realization emerges regarding the purpose of the work. It is no longer solely about personal success, recognition, or reward. While these may still exist, they become secondary. The work itself takes on greater significance. It becomes a form of expression, a way to contribute something meaningful. This shift reduces pressure
and allows a person to work with greater freedom. Ego begins to lose its influence in this stage. The need for validation, praise, or approval starts to fade. A person becomes less concerned with how their work is perceived and more focused on the act of creating. This does not mean they ignore feedback, but that their sense of worth is no longer dependent on it. This independence strengthens confidence and allows for more authentic expression. Challenges still arise, but they are approached differently. Instead of being seen as obstacles, they are viewed as part of the process. Each difficulty becomes an opportunity to learn and improve. This mindset reduces frustration and increases resilience. A person becomes more willing to experiment, take risks, and explore new ideas.
Another important aspect is the relationship with failure. In earlier stages, failure may have been feared or avoided. Now, it is accepted as an essential part of growth. Each unsuccessful attempt provides valuable insight. Instead of discouraging action, it encourages refinement and persistence. The concept of inspiration also evolves. It is no longer something that is waited for, but something that arises through action. By engaging consistently with the work, a person creates the conditions for inspiration to appear. This understanding removes the need to rely on unpredictable bursts of creativity. There is also a growing sense of responsibility toward the work. It is no longer seen as optional or secondary, but as something that deserves attention and respect. This sense of responsibility strengthens commitment and ensures that effort continues even during difficult periods. As this stage progresses, a person becomes more comfortable with uncertainty. They no longer need to have all the answers before moving forward. This openness allows for exploration and discovery. It also reduces the fear of making mistakes, as mistakes are seen as part of the journey. The process of learning becomes more continuous and self-directed. Instead of relying solely on external guidance, a person begins to trust their own instincts and experiences. They become more aware of their strengths and areas for improvement. This self-awareness guides their efforts and helps them make better decisions. Another shift occurs in how time and effort are valued. Instead of seeking quick results, there is an appreciation for long-term growth. Patience becomes more natural, and progress is measured over extended periods rather than immediate outcomes. This perspective reduces frustration and supports sustained effort. There is also a deeper sense of satisfaction that comes from engaging fully with the work. This satisfaction is not dependent on external rewards, but comes from the act of creation itself. It provides a sense of purpose and fulfillment that is more enduring than temporary achievements. Relationships with others may also change during this stage. A person may seek out individuals who share similar values and goals. These connections can provide support, inspiration, and constructive feedback. At the same time, they may distance themselves from influences that discourage or distract them from their work. Another important realization is that growth is an ongoing process. There is no final point where everything is mastered. Each level of progress reveals new challenges and opportunities. This understanding keeps a person engaged and motivated, as there is always more to learn and explore.
The role of discipline remains important, but it becomes less of a struggle and more of a habit. What once required effort and determination now feels natural. This does not mean the work becomes easy, but the resistance to it decreases. A person becomes more aligned with their goals and actions. There is also a greater sense of clarity regarding priorities. Distractions become less appealing, and time is used more intentionally. A person becomes more selective about how they spend their energy, focusing on what truly matters. The connection between effort and progress becomes more evident. Consistent work leads to visible improvement, reinforcing the value of discipline. This creates a positive cycle where progress motivates further effort.
Another aspect of this stage is the ability to recover quickly from setbacks. Instead of dwelling on mistakes or failures, a person learns to move forward. This resilience prevents prolonged periods of inactivity and keeps momentum intact. There is also a growing appreciation for the process itself. Instead of viewing work as a means to an end, it becomes an end in itself. This shift changes the entire experience, making it more enjoyable and meaningful. The sense of identity continues to evolve. A person no longer sees themselves as someone struggling to achieve something, but as someone who is actively engaged in their work. This identity reinforces commitment and consistency.
Over time, the gap between intention and action becomes smaller. A person is more likely to follow through on their plans and less likely to delay. This alignment creates a sense of integrity and self-trust. The journey at this stage is not about eliminating challenges, but about developing the ability to navigate them effectively. It is about building a relationship with the work that is based on commitment, trust, and persistence. As this transformation continues, a person becomes more aware of their potential. They realize that their limitations were often self-imposed and that consistent effort can lead to significant growth. This awareness encourages them to set higher goals and push beyond previous boundaries. The work itself becomes a source of growth, teaching lessons that extend beyond the specific task. It develops patience, resilience, focus, and self-awareness. These qualities influence other areas of life, creating a broader sense.
With sustained effort, work transforms into a way of life, where action and purpose naturally align, and hesitation loses its power. A person develops quiet strength, working with commitment rather than relying on mood or external validation. Purpose becomes clear, guiding decisions and reducing distractions, while solitude is embraced as a space for focus and growth. They understand that mastery is ongoing, built through consistent effort, patience, and resilience. Confidence becomes grounded in experience, and failure is seen as a tool for learning rather than something to fear. Discipline, focus, and identity